This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskoski.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. We're here for the funeral. The Mets missed the playoffs. At one point, they were the best team in baseball. Now, they may be the most embarrassing team in baseball. Hi, Ashley. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the funeral, everyone. We unfortunately are putting on this procession a few weeks to really a month earlier than we did last year. It came around quickly. The long-awaited slow-motion car accident that we were all watching for the last 3 months with the New York Mets, it's over. And I think today people have a lot of emotion, a lot of raw feelings about the situation, a lot of betrayal. But I also think for some people, not having to watch this team anymore is just blunt relief.
That is such a great way to describe it. The slow-motion car accident is so real. And I kind of agree. I hate to say that I do feel relieved, but it would be a lie to say anything else.
It would be a lie to say that I'm upset that this season is over, but also certainly never forget it. What a ride it was.
You guys, Ashley did the best sports block last night that had music
Guys.
in the background, talking about all of the different stats that really point out, display, and show what a collapse this was. This, I think, is really one of the first years in my life that I can fully remember all of the pain and heartbreak that comes with being a Mets fan. Because don't you, now that it's over, feel like it would have been better if they just sucked from the start? Like, I would have rather rooted for the Rockies this entire season.
Oh,
seriously.
Well, we were hook, line, and sinker in about May. I mean, preseason, the cover of Sports Illustrated, then they go out, they live up to it. It's like you sit here thinking about, are we going to win the division or not? Like, that was the real question in May and June. And then all of a sudden we're not making the playoffs. Last night, if you were lucky enough to live in the Syracuse, New York market, I have a little bit of room to mess around on Sundays. And I don't mean mess around in a joke. Well, it was a joke, but we did a full funeral for the Mets as a part of the 10 and 11 o'clock sports blocks. It was in black and white. There was sad piano music. I invited everybody to go on a journey with me and mourn. And I presented them a few facts that I'm about to present you. And I'm sure if you're a Mets fan, you know a lot of these things. But it also, you just actually have to say them out loud for it to feel real and to compute that this was inexplicably one of the worst, collapses in franchise history, probably in baseball history. Let's go through it. Okay, you know that on June 12th, they had baseball's best record. They were 21 games over 500. Since that day, since June 13th, was it a Friday? Friday the 13th? Somebody check up on that for me. They went 38-55 over the final 3 months of the season. That was a better record than only the White Sox, Rockies, Nationals, and Twins. Only 2 teams in baseball history. This is historic. The 1905 Indians and 1977 Cubs finished with worse records after climbing 21 games over 500. For the record, they finished the season 4 games over 500.
I mean, that last stat is remarkable.
2 times it's ever happened.
It shows you what an exclusive club that the 2025 Mets team is going to be a part of. Forget about how even I feel or how Ashley feels. What about how Gary feels? What about how Keith feels?
Don't start with me.
And what about Ron?
No.
That was a very upsetting few minutes at the end of that Marlins game for all those who stuck around to hear their final thoughts. I was not happy.
I don't think anybody was. They also reminded us in that segment that this was their 20th year together, and I don't need to count how many more years they might have before the band gets broken up. That's another topic. Anyway, very bad. So, and this is all things that any Mets fan knows, right? Biggest contract in the game this year, $340 million. They finished the year with 83 wins. You know what that means? They paid $4.1 million per win they got this year. When trailing after 8 innings, they were 0-70. They did not have one single walk-off win to their name. And as you all know, if you are a Mets fan, or maybe even if you're not, if you're just a baseball fan, nobody chased them down. There was nobody coming up running behind them. The Cincinnati Reds were at a cool, slow jog. They were not sprinting. They were not gaining pace on them. The Reds played 500 baseball over the last a brisk walk. Honestly, they were out there on a power walk, pumping the arms
on a fall day. Just walking.
There will be no fall nights in Queens. And for our listener that says that makes me very upset. Anyway, the Reds played 500 baseball over the last 3 weeks of the season and lost yesterday and still tripped and fell on an all expenses paid vacation to play the Dodgers. The Reds, I should remind you, have a payroll of $119 million, which is nearly a third of the Mets. Just imagine for a minute. You actually, all that's nice, but a tournament, okay? The MLB playoffs, a tournament that allows 12 teams into it. 6 teams from the National League, 6 teams from the American League. That's nearly half of a 30-team league, and your $340 million, the most in baseball, doesn't cut it. Nope, you're not one of the 12.
The money actually bothers me less than one stat that you just mentioned briefly. When trailing after 8 innings, they were 0-70 on the year. I'm pretty sure that I saw that they're the only team across all 30 teams to have not won a single game in that situation.
0-70.
0-70.
Remarkable.
No, it's like actually impressive.
You would think that they would have won one of those games by accident. Somebody gets hit by a pitch. I don't know.
Like just something crazy happens. It is beyond belief that in those situations they would go 0-70. A stat like that makes me feel like this was a train that we knew was arriving at the station all along. A stat like that makes me feel like on June 13th, I should have stopped watching as many games as I was watching and started reading more books, and at least I would have been, I would have read 10 books by now.
Right.
And I would have been a little smarter or something. I would have walked away with literally anything, a new skill. Maybe I should have cooked more. Like, there's a lot I could have done with that time.
Who's to say, really?
Who's to say?
Painted.
I don't see you as a knitter, but
I'm not
I
a
could
knitter
be wrong.
or a painter, but I throw out things that I hear people do.
The point is we could be both knitters and painters by now.
Right.
But we'll never know that because we spent so much time on watching the New York Mets with the hopes that at some point they would turn it around. One of the cast members of Gary, Keith, and Ron, someone said yesterday, I think that the New York Mets are as surprised as the fans right now. And that, I think, is so true, too. It's like the fans and the players just confused, bamboozled,
hoodwinked,
shocked,
led
really
astray.
Hoodwinked.
I was led astray.
And how often do we say bamboozled and hoodwinked? But it could not be more applicable than in a situation like right now. It is more upsetting because you know how much potential existed on this roster. It is more upsetting when you look at the seasons that Soto and Nimmo and Lindor and Alonso had. It is more upsetting when you think about what we're about to get to, which is that who knows where Alonso is going to end up. Don't tell me that I'm not going to say this is the year, but it was one of the years. It was the year you prepped for. It was the year we were all planning for.
All the cards were on the table. All
and
of
you
them.
Disappointed us.
Yeah, and I think the players themselves, to your point, Brandon Nimmo said yesterday post-game, he said, quote, this is the most talented team I've ever been on. What do you have to show for it? Zero. Zippo. Zilch-o, nada, nothing. You didn't even get to the wild card round. Can I say, when I made that prediction, which was 2 full weeks ago, we sat here and I said the Mets won't make the playoffs.
You did say that.
I did say that. But of course there was a part of me that didn't actually, that's how I felt. My intuition said that. But the other part of me was like, man, like, can that really be the case with all of the trials and tribulations we've gone through this year? And it turns out that was the case. I know that there are sportsier explanations for this. I know there are analytics that explain it. There are injuries that explain it. There are moves that were not made that explain it. But you just put your finger on something like more than all that. 0-70 after trailing after 8 innings. There was no heart. There was no, whatever it was, they didn't have it. They just did not have it. They couldn't find it. At times you saw flashes in the pan when they swept the Phillies, and there were moments, but they did not have that fight for each other, that magic that the 2024 team had, which is the cruel twist of fate, right? Because we all sat here last year and it's like the Mets somehow tripped and fell and made the NLCS. Yeah, last year was a good team, had many of the same players, but it wasn't a team that anybody looked at as a great team headed down the stretch in 2024, and they just fought their way there. They just gutted it out. And this team was the absolute exact opposite of that.
This team was a great team that never fully lived up to its potential. It's like, I feel like
A sham, a phony.
it's like that son or daughter who is the smartest of all your kids, but never has the highest GPA. You don't know why.
They didn't apply themselves.
They didn't apply themselves. But the crazy thing is, maybe that's not even the right analogy, because don't you feel like at least some of the players on this team did apply themselves? I actually think, you said whatever it is, they don't have it. My best guess is that it is the culture. The culture was never really defined this year, whereas I felt like even last year, at least that was strong. You knew that they were the team that was the come from behind team. You know, they could, you said Magic Mets, they could make the magic happen in times when that was really needed. I was not seeing any magic tricks that were impressive to me this time around. I am feeling like they were the ones that were fooled. And I don't know exactly why that is. Did you need, you know, a glue guy or a guy that was a little crazy or spicy, like a Jesse Winker or like a Jose Iglesias? Should you have brought one of those guys back? Like I'm saying, should you have brought Jose Iglesias back? I don't know. I kind of thought probably. I thought it couldn't have hurt.
I mean, we didn't exactly see Nick Madrigal out there, so.
And the thing is, would one player have even been enough? Because you feel like Francisco Lindor is normally that glue guy. So why wasn't any one player enough to pull the culture together? And this is not me blaming Juan Soto, but did he have something to do with it in a negative or positive way? Like, did he switch anything up or shift anything up in a way that made it harder? I have no idea. Like, I'm truly just grasping at straws. He had an amazing season. He most certainly contributed to the Mets' success, and he was a part of the reason why they did as well as they did.
Yeah.
But what happened here?
I think they're all relevant questions. I think it was a snowball. I think like the minute things started to go down the tubes in July and in August with the starting pitching and Senga's hurt and Manaya's hurt and we're piecing together bullpen games and okay, but it's okay. Look in the rearview mirror. We're still 10 games above 500. We still have a 2-game lead on the division. Oh, we're only 2 games back from the Phillies. We're only 4 games back from the Phillies. It just, I think, snowballed. I can't answer any of those questions about the culture in the clubhouse because I wouldn't know any better than anybody, any reporter that is there every single day reporting on the team. But I think it was very evident that this team just had too many obstacles to overcome. The starting pitching, putting them in the position that they did. I mean, from the bullpen to the lineup, they're behind in X amount of games. The bullpen has to come in and be the savior 3 nights a week. Guys are in long relief. I think that is what really tanked the entire operation. I mean, they were putting Band-Aids on the situation as early as the trade deadline and as late as right after the trade deadline. You didn't feel like, and David Stearns owned up to this today at his press conference, they did enough at the deadline to shore up the glaring holes that they had. But yet everybody, including us and including the whole fan base and baseball fans, sort of were like, well, yeah, this is a hole for them and this is a hole, but they'll figure it out. There's enough talent there on paper. On paper, didn't get them anywhere.
Well, I think that you said it right. They're trying to put Band-Aids on a bullet hole.
Yeah.
At some point, I think they just bled out. There was only so
shot.
much, right? Like, there's only so much that you can do by making these teeny tiny little moves. And I have to be honest, you said that you knew it. You knew that it was coming since 2 weeks ago, which is true. If you guys watch our episode, you'll see that she did say that. I really did not know that this was going to be their fate until yesterday before the games were played. Yesterday, before the Mets played and before the Reds played, I thought in my head, no. Whereas last year, I would have thought, maybe, or yes. This year, I thought, no. And even when I saw that the Reds were going to lose, still no. No chance, no shot. There was obviously that moment where Pete Alonso could potentially get some runs on the board. No, it was over at that point. And obviously, that was sort of like the cherry on top of an effed up cake, is that yesterday, still even when you mentioned the whole no one chased them down, even yesterday, they still could have just won that game and gotten in.
No one was running.
And they couldn't even do that.
No one was running, including them. They didn't break into a sprint. I knew for sure when Sproat lost in the first game of the Miami series. Something about asking that team to win 2 in a row felt like too much. And is that a winning recipe going into the playoffs?
It did feel like too much. That's so true. The Marlins, if anyone is curious, although everyone knows this too, have now ended the season for the Mets in 07, 08, and 2025. Even that, how excited the Marlins and even the Marlins broadcaster were is so pathetic. Like, that makes me realize how upsetting it is that the Mets aren't in the playoffs.
No, I have something to say.
Okay.
And it relates to the Marlins broadcast team, okay? And the Marlins themselves. They're like taking pictures in front of the dugout. What are we celebrating? We're not in the playoff picture at all.
I don't know.
I mean, I get it. You played the upset. You played the underdog and the Mets are a division rival. I do understand the concept. You're not playing for anything else. At the same time, it's like, can we have some dignity and like maybe a shred of pride? The Marlins broadcasters were literally, if you have not, all right, we're doing what we always talk about on Sports Talk Radio, and we're doing it right now. We're fully down the trenches. If you have not taken a journey and gone back and listened to / watched the last minute of that game from the Marlins TV perspective, take yourself on a journey and a walk. That guy, he could be a great broadcaster. I don't know him. He is celebrating like they just won Game 7 of the World Series. He's screaming into the mic. He's like, it's over. The Marlins did it. What did they do? What did they do?
He was gearing up for the Super Bowl. But I'm saying that's what upsets me is like they're taking a team photo, and I am thinking, what is going on right now?
Like, what are we labeling that photo? Are we hanging it somewhere?
What in the Florida is that?
What in the Florida is that?
But again, my point is, like, the Marlins cared that much because that's all they had to look forward to. You had so much more to play for if you're the Mets, and it seemed like they didn't even care. Like, that entire ballpark, by the way, was like Mets fans. Like, wasn't even Marlins fans. It was like, in my dad's words, a bunch of New Yorkers who retired to Florida and went to watch this game.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason that they couldn't have won 2 out of 3 there, other than the fact that for the past 3 months, that's just not what they've done.
But we got to a point, and this is hindsight 2020, but even before, it would have been strange to see this team, the Mets, like in the clubhouse with champagne celebrating. Even if they made it, even if they won yesterday, watching that procession with how things had gone downhill and how the expectations hadn't been met would have been honestly strange to see like Alonso and Lindor like popping champagne.
I completely agree. It would have made more sense just to be like, phew, like, thank God that didn't happen.
Maybe hug each other and
like a couple high fives. I felt like they even would have felt like they didn't necessarily deserve it. Like, it would have been like sort of an imposter syndrome situation. I'm sure not, and I'm sure there would have been champagne and whatever. But even beyond that, how much further would that have team made it? I'm not sure.
I don't think they would have made it out of the wild card round, which is maybe now we can at least say that we saved our time, our effort, and our pain for, a few days.
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah, right. Sure. Anything that you want to say about Sunday's game or what you wish they would have done differently, or does that even matter?
It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. Like we're saying, the bigger picture is all right there.
Doesn't matter.
Me telling myself that it just doesn't matter. I'm talking myself off the ledge. However, I think there were some really questionable decisions in this game. Sean Manaea starts the game. Let's just start there. That was not a recipe for success.
No.
When they announced Manaea would be pitching, I announced that I'd like to see myself out. He went an inning and 2/3. Mendoza, to say that Mendoza had a quick hook there would be like the understatement of the century. It was the second inning and there were 2 outs. He walked the second guy in the inning. So Mendoza says enough. Okay, I get it, kind of. You're managing like this is Game 7 of the World Series because there is no tomorrow. Brings in Brazoban. Brazoban gets out of it. Brooks Raley came in to start the 4th inning and gave up 1 hit. 1 single hit. Now, this is where I know that anybody that watches this team every night of the season is probably going to agree with me. This is your grasp on reality. Why would we bring in Ryan Stanek, a guy who has sucked all year long, literally had a 5.01 ERA going into the day yesterday? Why would we bring him in favor of Raley, who is probably your most reliable reliever other than a guy named Edwin Diaz? And Raley hasn't been perfect either. But he gives up 1 hit and it was over managing. I think we can all admit that. Ryan Stanek came in, did exactly what Ryan Stanek does, and he got 1 out. He gave up 2 runs. Tyler Rogers gave up another. Next thing you know, it's 4-0 Marlins. Nobody's coming back. Nobody's hitting. That's it. Good night. See you in 2026.
Yeah. I liked how when Edwin Diaz was warming up, they just kept on showing the bullpen and no one else was even there.
It was like people were saying, like, this is not a drill. Edwin Diaz is warming up in the 4th inning.
Yeah, that it all seems sort of questionable. You knew it was going to get kind of sketchy in that game. But if it matters to anyone, the Mets did go 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Feels like that's pertinent just as sort of an encapsulation of the entire season.
Yeah, the hitting,
I don't think it really matters.
It doesn't matter, but honestly, the hitting, Mendoza's decisions, this was one of the first games I watched this year that I actually bona fide said a lot of this is on Mendoza with the pitching switches. But the hitting is honestly almost worse because you could have scored 5 runs and, been in the wild card round. The hitting, we didn't show up to play today. We can't string together any offense whatsoever.
Well, that's the irony. Not to say that we couldn't talk about Mendoza's decisions, because I know there are more and more people who are in this growing camp of, fire Mendoza. And of course that was going to come after this. But he could have managed it in any possible way, and as long as the Marlins scored 1 run, the Mets wouldn't have won that game yesterday.
And that's just the cold hard truth, folks.
You can't win a game by scoring 0 runs, so it really wouldn't have mattered what he did. And I
Nothing
think that's
matters. This is a floating rock
too. Before we move on, Ashley has a question written here. What single player was the biggest disappointment this season for the Mets? That's interesting.
I know my answer.
You do know it. Mm-hmm. All right, then you go.
It's actually 2, so I'm cheating, but they're together. I think it's easily Minaya and Kodai Senga. Those are the 1-2 at the top of your rotation. What did Minaya give you, 60 innings this year and sucked through half of them? I mean, we're doing piggyback starts. I know he's hurt, so I'm not trying to crucify the guy, and he was kind of pitching through injury, and that was tough. Maybe we should have identified that earlier in the season. Maybe we should have brought in a bona fide frontline starter to fill that hole. Kodai Senga, right up there too. Not consistent, dealing with injury. I mean, it's a tough ask throughout your season when 1A and 1B really just don't show up at all.
I agree. Yeah, out of those 2, I guess. I see you also put Vientos on the list. That's an interesting one. I'm wondering if any of you feel that way. So maybe that's our question of the week. Let us know who disappointed you this season. I, out of those guys, would go Minaya.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, I feel like with Senga, you're even kind of used to the feeling of him getting hurt, and it feels like that happens semi-frequently. With Minaya, especially after the things, I actually interviewed him in AAA Syracuse when he was on his way back up. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking, how do you feel? And obviously who's going to be like, honestly, I'm not feeling good. It's feeling like I'm going to be a different pitcher than I was before the injury.
I feel like shit.
Right. That's not going to happen. But I felt like he really seemed confident in the fact that he was going to be able to come back the same kind of guy. And it wasn't that situation at all. So that was upsetting. I can't go after any pitcher who got injured because I just don't. I mean, I know Minaya got injured, but he came back. So any pitcher or whoever, if there were any injuries where the person's done for the year, that doesn't really matter to me, and I'm not going to include them on my list. I guess Vientos I wasn't impressed with, but I also think that Brett Beatty is good enough that you quite honestly could use Vientos as a trading piece.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what they do this offseason with that. And that'll be interesting to kind of watch all those moves play out. Pete Alonso. Let's get to Pete Alonso here because we have a lot of discrepancies with a lot of different things these past 24 hours. And good old Pete said, what if I just keep laying it on?
To be fair, a reporter did ask the question, so what's he going to do? Lie?
I guess, but all right, well, okay. Diaz, I think, answered it in a much better way.
Right,
Alonso,
sure.
All right, the tears aren't even dry. The door's not even locked. My face is still wet. I'm still in mourning. Pete Alonso, 30 seconds later, a crisp 30 seconds later, is yeah, I'll be opting out of my contract. I really enjoyed my time as a Met. Hope we can work something out. Pete, could we have maybe waited even 2 minutes? Even 2. I know that's the playbook for Boris clients. We saw Soto do it after the World Series last year. Pete Alonso, obviously a Boris client, so that's just what they do. I thought Edwin Diaz handled it a little better. He said, I will be speaking with my family before deciding. You can't even technically do it until the day after the World Series ends, which is in a month. Chill out, Pete. We get it.
Pete Alonso was like, I have spoken with my wife, and we have decided I will be opting out of my contract.
See you all never again.
But I don't know. I mean, in a way, I don't know. I actually found it sort of refreshing. It didn't really change anything for me. I felt like, well, of course that's what's going to happen.
We knew it was coming. So it didn't come as a shock to me. And based on the way that the year went and based on the way that he performed,
honestly, I just wasn't all that surprised. I think that it's okay that he said it. I think it's okay to put everyone on blast because obviously the Mets do have things to discuss, do have a decision to make. There are going to be other people who are hunting for him. Someone today, speaking of, have the tears even dried yet? Someone from our station today said that they thought that he would fit in really well with the New York Yankees.
I don't want to hear that.
Who would say such a thing?
I'm not interested in that. I am
that
going to
disheartening?
kick that person out of the building.
Like what? Pete Alonso in pinstripes, it is too soon. That's where I'll draw the line. Personally, it's too soon for me to be having those sorts of discussions at this time.
Yeah.
But I do understand where Pete Alonso is coming from. What do you think that the Mets should do as far as that's concerned?
I think they will re-sign him. I think Cohen is smart enough to know that, especially with what happened this year. I mean, becomes the Mets' all-time home run leader, has a good season, all things considered, was really on a tear through the first half. I think Cohen knows to let him walk would be a mistake. And I think that I could see him going more towards the DH role. I think, obviously, as he's over 30 now, that kind of will begin to be a conversation. But it's going to depend on what he wants. Obviously, they had sort of a tumultuous negotiation period last winter, and Cohen revealed that. So I think if he asks for the moon once again, if you're the Mets, it's like, how many times can we tell you that we're not doing that? Mm-hmm. At the same time, with the Yankees comparison at the forefront of my mind, Steve Cohen is smart enough to know that you have to pay whatever it takes to not let him go to the Bronx.
Well, that's the hard part, is I think that now he's in a different situation than he was last winter, so perhaps he can ask for more.
Yeah.
Beyond Pete Alonso, I want to just say one thing to get it out of the way. I most certainly think that you need to be, if you're smart enough to re-sign Pete Alonso, then you have to be smart enough to also be re-signing Edwin Diaz at this time.
I agree. Yeah. And Diaz is older, and I think the market for him will be high. I think they will re-sign Diaz. I think Alonso is more interesting because, and we will have broader discussions about this in the offseason, but you look at this core and what they have and have not been able to achieve, and it's very evident in everybody's mind that the core needs to be blown up to some degree. And you look at, that's not happening with Lindor, that's not happening with Soto, that's not happening with Nimmo because he's still signed to the team. I don't know what the trade market would look like for him. So if you need to blow it up to some degree, how are you blowing it up? I'm not suggesting that it should be Alonso, but
What do you do?
What do you do?
And what other options are there?
Yeah.
Beyond that, let's talk about one other thing. Andy Martino says that the Mets have no plans to fire Carlos Mendoza off of this collapse, as they shouldn't. That's what Andy Martino said. Beyond that, it gets interesting, and said that there are several changes to the coaching staff incoming. How did you feel when you heard that?
I felt good about it. David Stearns reconfirmed that today. He said Mendoza will be back. Carlos Mendoza will be the manager of this team next year. For all of you that didn't want that, you're just going to have to wrap your head around that. I think there is significant blame to be placed on Mendoza. I think that there were questionable bullpen decisions down the stretch, questionable lineup decisions. Obviously, that all gets more and more nitpicky as you continue to lose games, right? That's stuff that people wouldn't have been cherry picking if they were winning.
Yes.
And that's just the blunt, honest truth.
Yes.
I think that Mendoza does have a good read on this team. I don't think that in year one, when the guy takes you to the NLCS, year two was obviously a huge disappointment, but I don't think he deserved to lose his job over it, and that's just how I feel. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay.
I completely agree with you. I don't think that it was enough for him to get fired. And again, I think if you just look at, like, even that game on Sunday where we're talking about questionable decisions, but nobody hit the baseball. Like, I'm not saying that none of this was his fault, but we had a discussion at this table, I think it was last week, about if you had to place blame somewhere, where would you place it? And I said the players, and that is still ultimately how I feel.
Yes.
Not to say that Stearns couldn't have done a few things better, because he could have. And I do appreciate the accountability that I've seen from multiple people within this organization, including but not limited to Steve Cohen.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that it was anyone's fault more than the players. End of the day, Mendoza cannot go out there and field. He cannot go out there and hit. I don't think that he got the best out of the players and the roster that he was given.
Mendoza is tasked, of course, with pushing the right buttons and motivating the players, and I'm sure he tried to do all of that. And I'm not totally taking all of that blame off of him, because it was very clear here in the down the stretch, the wheels were falling off the bus and he didn't know what to do about it. But to your point, I mean, just take Sunday. You can take the broader picture, but just take Sunday. They give you 0 runs to work with, and Sean Manaea gets into the second inning. Like, it's at a point, what is he working with here?
What is he to do at a certain point? Anyway, Steve Cohen also had a message to fans this morning on Twitter. He said, Mets fans everywhere, I owe you an apology. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. We will do a postmortem and figure out the obvious and less obvious reasons why the team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. I'll stop there. Less obvious reasons. I thought that was interesting and pretty candid coming from an owner.
Yeah, I agree.
He also says, we are feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care and continues to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in sports. That's really something. Could have went a lot of different ways with that. Could have used words that were, throwaway words. Didn't do any of that. Did exactly what I think fans would want because ultimately he is a fan.
Steve Cohen's a couple things. He is obviously a very rich man who has sort of a empty wallet when it comes to the Mets. He is also a longtime diehard Mets fan, and he's also a smart man. And I think that he knows, as well as we do, that the Mets, with all of that, they surpassed 3 million people in attendance. They had games out there in June against like the Nationals that sounded like playoff games in that place that were sellout crowds. Steve Cohen is smart enough to know that this result is not going to bode well with the fan base, especially a fan base, for instance, that you promised a World Series to in your first 3 to 5 years voting the team. Guess what, guys? This was year 5. So we fell short of that. And Steve Cohen knows that. And I think due to that, there will be some sweeping changes all around, leadership-wise, player-wise, all of that this offseason. Because you can blame whoever you want, honestly, except for Steve and Alex Cohen.
So true. But it is also true to say that they fell short of that mightily. Like, fell short of that in a big way, and those are big promises, so of course people are going to expect more. He wasn't the only person who we heard from today. David Stearns also spoke with the media. He said, I'm the architect of this team, I like that word, and I'm responsible for it. He felt like he didn't fortify their roster from injury. He said the defense wasn't good enough and the offense didn't capitalize. He also, like you said, doubled down and said that Mendoza will be back. I think if anything, Stearns, as far as who played a role here and who played a big role, I'd put Stearns pretty high on the list.
I put Stearns the highest. He knew the issues at the deadline and whatever and didn't do enough to fix them. And honestly, I think got a little too crafty and a little too cute, even in the preseason, even in the spring with, throwing the Nick Madrigals of the world at the problem. I think that I liked what he had to say today. I thought he pretty much had no other option but to go out there and put the blame on himself and be accountable. And he did that. In terms of the rotation, he said everything's on the table, including, maybe they will acquire a frontline starter, but says that the main emphasis will be on continuing to develop that pitching talent from within. I think I speak for everyone when I say that we are all very excited about Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong and saw flashes, down the stretch here, but it does feel like Minaya and Senga just simply cannot be the answer at the top of that rotation heading into 2026.
I totally agree. I don't mind the emphasis on building from within. I do think that obviously McLean, but also Sproat and Tong have potential. It's easy to look back now and say that you probably brought Tong up too soon, which they probably did.
Yep.
But also they were in a bind and they weren't sure exactly what to do. I still think that Tong, by next year, you're going to see a different kind of pitcher. He's just somebody who frankly needed a little more time. On Pete, Stern said Pete is a great Met. I'd love to have Pete back and we'll see how this offseason goes. I mean, as expected.
Yeah, not really much to write home about there. So that's it for the Mets. It's over. Tell us your thoughts in the comment section. The long national nightmare is over. I won't miss them. Honestly, I won't. And that's, I think, the problem is this was a team that you will not miss. I won't miss watching this team every night. I like some of the players, but it just got to be too much. Unfortunately, I'll never forget the long national nightmare that they did put me through. In terms of this podcast, I know people have a lot of questions there. We are going to continue to do episodes through the next month, through the World Series. Probably a little more frequently and a little more sporadically on, when there's something big to talk about, like Yankees, Red Sox, wild card series, obviously a series we're very interested in talking about. Reds, Dodgers. I know all of our Dodgers fans are out there. So we're going to be talking about the big things with the playoffs, and we are going to just cover baseball in a broader sense for the next month, because we didn't really think this was ending as early as it was. So now we're kind of left to pick up the pieces just like everybody else.
We're left to continue talking about more baseball. Want to again say thanks to all of you. We really appreciate you being here this season. It was so fun hanging out with you in year 2 of this podcast. Truly blown away. Can't believe how much it's grown, and look forward to growing with you more over the next month.
And I have one last question, because we have to say this before the playoffs start. Who is your playoff team now?
Guardians.
That's a good one.
I'll go with the Guardians.
I like that.
I want to root for a team that did the opposite of what the Mets did. I want to root for a team that has heart, and that's what I'm going to go with. How about you?
I was going to say Red Sox. Because I think they haven't been there in a long time, and I don't think they'll be the World Series champions. We're probably in that conversation, but I would like to see them beat the Yankees and the Mariners. I think the Mariners haven't been there in a really long time. That's a really hungry fan base out in Seattle, and I would love to see them succeed. And of course, if you're a Mets fan, you have to go with an AL team. That's just how it works.
I understand. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We will see you back here when the next big thing happens. Have a great day.